Welcome to Answers from the Stairs, an off-the-cuff chat with Chris Vester. On this show, Chris provides insight on all areas of your life, whether it be your business, your relationships, or your health. Chris is a longtime business owner and coach looking to help everyone and anyone find their purpose and beat mediocrity. In his experience, he can teach anyone to reach their true potential. If you're ready to realize your God-given talents, then welcome to the show.
Consistency over intensity. Harvey, this one's for you. Last night, I was able to attend the North Carolina State Wolfpack UNC Tar Heel game, courtesy of Harvey Dawes from PNC Bank. And thank you, Harvey. Well, we were talking, and he was celebrating his 1-year anniversary of working out consistently every single day, and had dropped about 40 pounds, improved his health. And he gave me his why behind it. And I said, yeah, I get that why. And he said, I got something probably for tomorrow's episode of Answers from the Stairs. And his motto was consistency over intensity. And I was like, yeah, that's perfect. Because it holds true. It holds true for sure when chasing health, right? It's way more productive to be consistent in that chase for health than to be like super intense like the majority of the resolutioners are at the beginning of the year, which I talked about the other day. They burn out fast. They don't have a plan. They're not thinking about it being the end of the year. They just go at it with super intense thought process, and there's no consistency. So for sure in fitness, it's that way in business. It's that way in your relationships. It's that way in your faith. Like in our church right now, we spent the last 3 years doing a very, very slow walk, intentional walk, chronologically through the Bible. And this year, we've begun a 1-year walk, just a much quicker pace. But it's just a little bit every day. It's just a consistent every day, rather than trying to cram it into a day or two or 15 minutes. It's just real quick. Consistency. Just being very consistent. Training on the workplace. Consistency over intensity. You can't cram it all into one day. You've got to be consistent. So, Harvey, you're right, man. It's absolutely consistency over intensity. But here's what I'll say. When you're being consistent, be as intense as possible. Don't go for that burnout intensity, but give it 100% for sure. But you never know where you're going to find, or I never know where I'm going to find the inspiration for these videos, where I'm going to, what's going to speak to me that I have the opportunity to share. See, sometimes it's a book, sometimes it's a podcast. Sometimes it's a conversation with one of my daughters or some of our team members. But today, it's a post. It's an Instagram post by someone I've mentioned on here before, Tyler Harris. Shout out to him. If you're not following him, go follow him. His content and his transparency is awesome. But this post on Instagram today said, if you're persistent, you will get it. And if you're consistent, then you'll keep it. And I think that really, really spoke to me, just because we talked about consistency before, about consistency over intensity. But the consistency is probably what made the biggest difference. Just being consistent in everything, whether it's your health, personal growth, dedication to your job, dedication to your relationship, just being absolutely consistent in every single aspect. Persistence will get you there, but consistency is what's going to keep you there. I think that's probably where, looking back at some of the issues that we have inside the company, or inside any issue I've ever had, a lot of it comes from just not being consistent, not being consistent with training, not being consistent with processes, just not having the consistency to develop a really strong habit or a really strong just lifestyle. When it comes to diet, persistence. You can drop 40 pounds in a year if you're just really, really persistent. But if you're not consistent with that for the rest of your life, you're not going to keep that weight loss, or you're not going to keep that good health. It's consistency. Consistency. If you're persistent, you'll get it. If you're consistent, you'll keep it. I'm going to be real transparent. I did not want to be in there today. I had absolutely no interest in climbing those stairs this morning. It's been the last part of the week in San Francisco, and came home yesterday, got in late, didn't get to bed till almost 1 o'clock, and just did not want to get up this morning. But accountability for myself, we've talked about that a lot, how important the accountability is. But we also talked about consistency, in the repetition, going through, getting just to one part of the daily activity so that the daily activity begins, creating that action. And for me, that action is just getting out of the dadburn bed and putting on some gym clothes, these sleeveless t-shirts, and getting down here and getting it done. Just knowing, hey, it's just 15 to 20 minutes. It's just 15 to 20 minutes. Just get it done. You'll feel better. And then selling myself on that idea. This morning was tough, but I kept telling myself, it's the repetition. It's not, I can't come in tomorrow and do 30 minutes and make up for it. Because the most important thing is the consistent repetition. Just like anything, whether it comes to training in life, whether it comes to fitness, it's the repetition that counts. We talk to our salespeople all the time about training. They hate training. Everybody. I hate training. Everybody hates training. But to get prepared to handle the customer, to give them that great experience, we need to be prepared and fully trained at all times. And we can't wait until it's game time to do the training. It has to be done every day. It has to be done through repetition, just tons of repetition and role play. So the answers today, I do not want to do this every day. That's just, some days it's just tough. Today was definitely one of those days. And so I did an interview this weekend while I was at NADA, and we talked about the importance of fitness in business. And I was real frank, and I said, man, there's been days that I got dressed, I got all the way to the gym, I did a warm-up set, I grabbed my bag, got in my truck, and drove home just because I wasn't feeling it. I was not feeling it at all. And just, I don't think that picture is being shown a lot. That everybody that's doing some type of video or doing these conversations, like it's just easy for them. It is not an easy thing. Today was not easy. But the repetition matters. Get up, get that rep done. Start that day off, build that energy. The signature of excellence. So I'm listening to, like I said, Maxwell's new book, Leadership. And in it, he quotes Jim Collins, who's another leadership author, who Jim Collins says that the signature of mediocrity is chronic inconsistency. And by contrast, the signature of excellence is relentless consistency. I think I talked a couple of weeks ago about being consistent in everything, whether it be your health goals or your business goals or sales goals or relationship goals. It's just consistency makes all the difference in the world. In fact, I think Harvey Dahl and I were talking about it at a game, and he said that he had learned that it was consistency over intensity because he had begun to work out every single day. So this quote I thought was very fitting and really spoke, because it said to me, where we fail is where we're just really inconsistent. No consistency, no accountability, and where things are going right, if you look, it's extremely consistent. I'm going to brag on our service departments at our dealerships right now. We have some of the highest rated service departments around. And it's because of how they handle that customer. They're extremely consistent with how they handle that customer, making sure that the customer's needs are met and their expectations are exceeded. So they have this relentless consistency. And then where things are going wrong, I look at those situations and go, you know what? There's just no consistency there. There's no consistency in training. There's no consistency, well, that's hard to say, in accountability. There's just no everyday consistency. I went to GrowthCon 3 and listened to a lot of great speakers, and one of them was Steve Harvey, and he talked about his level of success because he came from basically being homeless, and now one of his goals is to have a $3 billion net worth. So pretty big goals. But he said, they asked him about, how often did he practice his craft? And it was every day, every day, every day, every day, every day. And he said it maybe 20 times to reiterate the consistency of doing something every single day. Being consistent leads to success. So the signature of excellence is relentless consistency. Relentless consistency. Like that. The greatest deception men suffer from is their own opinion and be the wave. First of those, talk. The whole charge of this book is read, write, and then speak. All of them are important. The reading, the writing, the reading to understand this examination of a subject. Writing so that you can write down your thoughts to help you discover your internal culture. But none of them really affect anyone outside except speak. This whole idea that we all have our own story. Each of us have developed our own story based on our experiences, and how, when going through this process, you develop a deep understanding of who you are and what your story really is. But until you begin to share that story, it's hard to find anybody that culturally aligns with you. You just go through life and never find that cultural alignment until you put your culture out there. But there's a difference between that inner truth, that deep truth, and opinion. It talks about the greatest deception we suffer from is our own opinion. Well, it's because most of life, unless we intentionally go for the knowledge or go for an experience or increase our understanding, then we just kind of get bounced around, and our opinions are formed based on really who we are around and who we're surrounded by, mainly through our youth. Our opinions of our childhood come from our parents and our family and our friends. We adopt their same outlook on life. And until we decide to start looking outside of that, we're really bound by that opinion. But if we do this exercise or go through an exercise where we try to determine what our deepest truths are, and again, I do say our truths. Remember yesterday, truth is not absolute, but what our truths are, by seeking out experiences and seeking out knowledge, then it's not opinion that we're bound by anymore. We actually have a story to tell, something to talk about, a story to share to help gain alignment. And truly, when you start sharing that story and someone starts sharing back, that's where true growth comes from. The last one was be the wave. Life is tumultuous. That's kind of a given, right? I said, I get tossed around a lot by experiences that just happen to us. And we have two ways we can look at that. This is how I see things. Life either happens for us, not to us, right? But a lot of people go through life thinking it's happening to them. Life's happening to them, and all they look at is the negative side of whatever experience that they're going through or whatever situation they're in the middle of. But if we adopt this idea that life is happening for us and we're looking for a way that to make that situation benefit us, what can we learn from it? How can we fail forward if it's a bad situation? And if it's good, it's easy for us to say, hey, that's happening for me. It's the bad that we say it happens to us. But if we just adopt this idea, he compares it to a tsunami. What side of the tsunami wave are you riding on? Are you riding on it so that you can ride the wave into the shore, or are you going to be fighting it and fighting it and fighting it and then just end in desperation? But if we look at every situation as, okay, what can I learn from this? How is it happening for me? How do I make this part of my story and part of my truth, so that I can learn from it, or someone else can learn from it? consistency is the key and a prerequisite to excellence. So listening to John Maxwell's podcast from this week today is the second part of The Price of Leadership. And he talks about discipline, but more than anything, he talks about consistency and how consistency compounds. And he explains how that it compounds in the next couple of ways that I'm going to explain. So first, it was that number one, consistency is a prerequisite for anything where you're going to be excellent at it. He said nobody ever got excellent being hit or miss. Pretty true statement. Being consistent builds your values. When you're consistent with something that are in line with your values, then all it does is, because people see you act consistent with your values, it builds that value system inside the organization. Whether that organization is a business, or your family, whatever, consistency builds value. Two, consistency builds your reputation. When people see that you're consistent at something, or they experience the consistency of something, then that becomes your reputation. When you're consistent at this one thing, whatever that may be. Whether for us, we hope we have a consistent consumer experience. Consistency also builds up your dependability. So people know it builds up a safety in everyone around you. No matter what level of an organization you're at, when people know that they can rely on you because you're always consistent, then that again builds up the safety net that they feel in you regardless. A leader knows, because he has a consistent person in the organization, that he can always depend on that person. And likewise, someone in the organization, if they have a consistent leader, then they know they can depend on that leader because of their consistency. So how does this all tie into our organization, or how might you know that how it ties in? For us, we've really gone back to the basics in our training, right? So down to the point of a greeting, having a common greeting among our entire sales organization, letting people know what we're there to do, how can we serve them, and what our values are, what our organizations are, what we're based on. And so we've been for the last 9-10 days working on this. How do we get our greeting perfected? How do we get it to be consistent? How is that what the consumer always understands is how are we there to serve them? What are we about? And how does that impact their experience at our dealership? But it's going to be consistent. Got to be consistent, because consistency is a prerequisite for excellence. So one of my takeaways was, in order for something to be consistent, you've got to be disciplined at doing it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about discipline in tomorrow's episode, because he made a statement that's, again, typical John Maxwell, big gold nugget of information. Those are my answers today. Are you being consistent? Are your teammates being consistent? Is your organization consistent? Process or results? Who do you love? So, I was having a conversation with a team member actually yesterday, and we're talking about them setting this particular goal for themselves and it was a life goal. It wasn't necessarily a goal about results of business. It was about more than anything a physical well-being goal that they had. And in that discussion, and I love the idea that they've made a decision to make that change, right? I love the fact they're looking to progress and move forward in their own physical wellness. But the part that was a little bit, and what I tried to coach on the most was understanding the process of that change. Yes, it's great to put that out there. You need to communicate it. You need to have people out there that can help hold you accountable to that change. Right? That's actually, I think that's key. The other thing was that you need to understand the process that's getting ready to happen, so that you're not completely hung up on the goal. You know, and this is not about plan A, plan B, because I don't believe in plan Bs. It's always plan A. This is about understanding that the growth is in the process. Yes, the ultimate goal is that end result. But we have to understand that the true value is in that process. Coming upon hardships, coming up on roadblocks, coming up on distractions, all these things that could get in our way. And what happens is when things get in our way, when we hit those roadblocks and we hit those obstacles, then we begin to give life and we breathe excuses into those things, and we give control of our end result to those roadblocks and those obstacles, rather than falling in love with the process of I'm gonna make my life better. I'm going to make my health better. Whatever it is we're trying to achieve, I'm going to improve my sales result. Whatever it is, falling in love with that process of growth, the process of growth, knowing that yes, the end result is what I'm looking for. But there's going to be challenges. There's going to be days that are really tough. But that's just part of the process, and loving those days, those super hard days where you almost lose focus of the end goal. Those are where the biggest amount of growth comes from. And having conversations with salespeople specifically about sales growth, and their idea of what success looks like and what their limit, quote unquote, limit of success is, and they breathe life into those limits, rather than falling in love with the process of touching people and enriching people's lives and that daily process, and letting the end result be eventual, what they deem success. Falling in love with the process. Love the process or love the results? My answers, and what I believe, if you love the process, then the results will be there. This might take a little longer, but it's those hard days is where the growth happens. Consistency. Again, so I've had a lot of direct messages actually, and then I've had actually a couple people that have stopped and asked me, man, how do you keep it so consistent? The ones that actually look at my Instagram posts and see these videos, what's your secret to consistency? And really, it's kind of to me, a two-part question. There is, I think, a secret to consistency, and that is making promises to yourself and then not wanting to break those promises to you. I think that's the ultimate key to finding some consistency in things. But what nobody does see, they see the consistency of my time that I wake up, and they see the consistency of my Bible reading and what time I try to get to the gym to get on the stairs, these videos. But what they don't see is the inconsistencies of the successes that come from this. Whether it's the success of maintaining my health, the success of struggling with faith, because that's a struggle. When I said success is a struggle, you're not looking to struggle, but you would think that focusing on it every day would lead to just the ultimate success. I think it leads to more success than not focusing on it at all, for sure. And in these videos, I talk about struggles inside the business. So there's maybe a little bit of that. But hopefully consistency leads to consistent success. And I talked about here Friday, I think it was Friday, or Thursday, about the process, understanding that everything is a process and falling in love with the process. I think that's part of consistency, is you've got to know that everything is part of the process, because it's not going to be extremely consistent success. Success is going to come and go. Nobody's guaranteed it. You're not even guaranteed it with success. You're just more likely to be with consistency. So, key, make a promise to yourself and then keep it. The second part of that is, again, knowing that consistency is part of the process. That it helps you get through those minor roadblocks or those challenges that you find or face every day when trying to reach whatever successes or goals you got to have in front of you. But everything starts with consistency. And consistency starts with you. Making that promise to you. Setting a time, I'm going to get up, and then getting up. Deciding you're going to get on a stair mill every single morning almost. And just doing it and being consistent about it. And when I tell people the key to this of consistency is yes, again. We're going to do it again. over and over and over until it becomes consistent. And hopefully that leads to some success. Today was a tough one. So, some days you just don't want to get out of bed. You lay down, you feel like you roll over and get right back out of bed. So yesterday was an extremely busy day for me. Came down the stairs in the morning, had a full day of work, lots of meetings, lots of mental work yesterday, which actually a lot of times to me is way more exhausting than any type of physical activity. Went to the gym with the intention of trying to calm my brain down from all the mental activity. And it worked somewhat. And then I laid down and literally feel like I blinked my eyes and woke back up this morning. So getting out of the bed this morning was a challenge. And I've had people ask me a lot, actually, is how on the days when you just aren't feeling it, do you do it? What's the motivation? What's the drive? And I think that's the differences between, I had a conversation with someone the other day about motivation. Motivation is temporary. Motivation is kind of like a shower. I think Lou Holtz says motivation is like a shower. We recommend taking them daily. So you need to be motivated daily. But the biggest thing is having something bigger than motivation that pulls you in the direction of getting out of the bed, getting active, getting the day started. Because I can tell you today on those stairs, get down there on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I do it's stairs, but it's a little different. So it's only 15 minutes, but it's about 65 floors. And knowing, the whole time I'm on there, I literally am thinking, it's okay. In about 16, 17 hours, you can go to bed. You can lay down and go to bed. Just get through this 15 minutes. Because I'm literally mentally exhausted already this morning. And the challenge is following the diet I'm following. I won't even eat until around 2:30, 3 o'clock. So the energy that I've got to rely on whatever stored or pulled from someone else. I've got to pull some energy from someone else this morning. But the motivation or the drive to get it, there's got to be something bigger than just motivation. It's got to be a different drive. And I've talked about it here before, the idea of staying as healthy as possible for every person involved in my life, my family, the business. I feel like it's my job and my duty to be in top physical shape, to perform the best I can, so that on days like today, where I am emotionally and physically, mentally drained, that at least the physical side of me can make it through. So it's just got to be a bigger why, I guess. But today was tough. And I don't talk about that on here a lot. But good Lord, it was tough to get up this morning. Tough to climb those stairs. And the timing's got to be exactly right, because the sun's not coming up as early. It's not even 7 o'clock. Sun rises at 7. And if I don't have my children out of the house by 7:30 because I take them to school in the morning, then it's a bad day for Daddy, because they disappointed the teachers. So, a lot going on this morning. And unfortunately, I didn't find any answers. But maybe that gives you some insight into, it's not always easy. But just got to find that why. Get up, even if all you say to yourself all day is, at 11 o'clock, you get to go to bed. At 11 o'clock, you get to go to bed. Make it through the day. Maybe I'll rest better tonight. Anticipation creates discipline. So, got up this morning and there was a release of John Maxwell, Candid Conversation podcast. And everybody knows I'm a massive John Maxwell fan. So I was like super excited because those Candid Conversations, they're just him and his CEO, Mark, sitting down having a candid conversation. And the title of this one was Faith and Fear, or Fear and Faith, same thing. And I'm like, well, that'd be great, man. What kind of lessons can I learn about how to use my faith to overcome fear? And that's not what I got out of it. Well, it was, but the bigger lesson was something he said at the very, very beginning when he said people looked at him and talked about how disciplined he was. Because I've heard people say that to me, right? I don't see myself as being super disciplined. I see myself as having created some good habits, but that doesn't, I believe in discipline because I think discipline gives you freedom. But he said it's not so much that he is super disciplined. He's just learned how to use anticipation to create discipline. And what he meant by that was the anticipation of whatever the outcome is going to be, or whatever activity he needs to do to create that outcome. So in other words, like he used to getting up at 5:30 every morning to write. He gets up every morning and writes. And he's written 72 books. And he says he's always involved in 3 books. The one he just finished, the one he's writing now, and the one he's next going to write. So he's constantly got all those thoughts in his head. So he gets up at 5:30 and writes every day. And he said it's not the discipline of getting up at 5:30 that makes it possible. It's not so much the discipline. It's the anticipation of knowing that he's going to write something that will impact millions of people. That anticipation of a good outcome, the anticipation of the result. So it made me think about myself and some of the things that people see as being ultra disciplined. You know, getting up, my Bible reading, doing the stair mill, going to the gym after putting in a 12-hour day. And like yesterday, didn't even eat until 5 o'clock in the afternoon for the first time. I had just a crazy busy day, but still figured out a way to put myself under some physical stress at the end of the day. People will say, well, that's discipline. And I don't think so. I think I just anticipate the outcome. I anticipate what it's going to feel like 20 years from now when I've got grandkids, being able to still somewhat, because I can't get on the floor and get off the floor good now, but being able to crawl around on the floor with my grandkids, being able to be active with my grandchildren. We had a good sales meeting yesterday, and we were talking about self-improvement. We've changed the term from training to self-improvement. And we fired off some things that I was able to overcome pretty quickly. But it's because way back 25 years ago, I had this anticipation of wanting to be able to handle a customer the best way possible and just constantly self-improve. It was the anticipation. It wasn't so much the discipline. It was the anticipation that created the discipline. So I went into the podcast today expecting to learn about faith and fear, which is a great podcast to talk about that because it talks about how you need fear to really exercise your faith, which I love. But the best lesson for me was, how do we communicate to those that I'm leading that don't look at it as trying to create discipline? Look at anticipating the outcome and let that anticipation create its own discipline.
Thank you for listening to Answers from the Stairs with Chris Vester, and for using the insights you gained to find your purpose and strength in anything you do. Tune in next week for another chat with Chris, and don't forget that reaching your true potential is not easy, but it's worth the work to find it and live in it. Until next time.